Hey, so I've been backpacking for 50 years now, um, mostly, mostly every year, and mostly solo. But I did something really different this year. I took my dog. Come here, dog. This is Darwin. He's my border collie. He's just terrific. He's a year and a half old, and so I wanted to take him with me. But that introduced a problem because I'm a hammock camper. I switched over to hammocks a few years back, and it is so much more comfortable and easy on my back. And as you know, all you really need is two trees for a hammock. But now, camping with a dog, you got another problem. And if so, I thought about, well, I could just leash him to a tree. But a dog out in the wilderness, in the open, is going to be insecure, and particularly one that hasn't been out in the wilderness a lot. And they're likely to bark at things. They're likely to wander around and get tangled up in their leash and in the potentially the guy lines of the tarp or whatever you may be using. So I searched the web for a solution to this, and I found one. And that's what I'm going to review today: is the Pet Palace from Cave Creek Hammocks. It's a U.S. operation, made in the USA, so I feel good about that. And I was really pleasantly surprised by the end result. So right here I've got, this looks bulky. It is bulky. It takes up a lot of room in my Hyperlite pack. But this is the Pet Palace, which you'll see, sort of a bug net tent that you're going to string your hammock through. But it's also the hammock. It's also my underquilt, my overquilt, and a quilt for my dog. So it's also got a couple of carabiners, so a little bit of suspension. And then I've got a little ground cloth made of 2-vac. That's really lightweight. I've got 8 stakes. I don't always use 8, but sometimes I do. And then I have my tarp. This is a fairly large tarp. So this whole, the sleeping quilts and the hammock and the bug net tent, the Pet Palace, that all weighs 3 kilograms. That's about 6.6 pounds. This weighs, this is the tarp. This is, you could certainly get a lighter weight tarp. This is a fairly large tarp. And it weighs about 700 grams, something like that. And then the tent stakes and the ground cloth. Anyway, the whole thing adds up to about 4 kilograms. And so that's 8.8 pounds, less than 10 pounds. So that's very comparable to my ultralight tent, plus my down sleeping bag, plus a lightweight inflatable pad, which always seems to get a hole in it, plus the ground cloth. So it's a pretty even trade. Okay, so I got my Tyvek ground cloth set down, and I already have my straps set up. They're the 2-inch, as I mentioned, the 2-inch spider webbing. Protects the trees, very important. So I've got this set up for really just a very quick setup. And I got one end, the foot end, coming out of the compression sack. So I'm going to set up my head end over there so that the door is facing you. So yeah, I'm just going to click and tie this off. Not sure exactly how tight yet. I've got a little toggle bolt attached to the carabiner so I don't lose it. So I can just do a quick hitch, pull it tight against the toggle, ready to go. Loosen up the compression sack straps. Open up this end. And reach in and grab the head end carabiner. You don't have to use a carabiner. I mean, there's lighter options, but I find these little 9 kilonewton carabiners to be very convenient and reliable, and really don't weigh very much. Now, I'm going to pull it pretty tight because I'm attached to a tree that bends a little bit. So normally I wouldn't pull it up this high, but when I get in it, you'll see it's going to stretch down. Probably, I might even be dragging butt on the ground. We'll see. Slip my toggle into that knot, tighten it up. Right. Now I've got the bottom of the Pet Palace wrapped around the ridge line so that keep things clean, wipe it off. You can even, if you're going away for a little while, you don't want to take, leaving camp and you don't want to take your tent down, you can strap it up like this, and that helps keep the critters out and things like that. So just undo that and let it fall. Move this up here. Notice that the Pet Palace has these little open and close sleeves that your hammock strings through, and then you can pull them tight, and that keeps the bugs out. Now the only problem I found is that the toggles, push toggles on this, for this very thin string, they don't hold very well, and so it kind of means you need to do a little loop tie on them. The only thing I would suggest to the maker is get a smaller pull toggle there. But so the hammock is stringing through, and honestly you can now sleep in it just as is. So I pulled it out, my underquilt is already set up underneath the hammock. These are the doors, the single door I should say, 2 zippers. I can pull it out, open up this door, and there I've got my top quilt, a netless hammock, and my underquilt. The underquilt's a Wookie from War Bonnet. It goes with my War Bonnet Blackbird XL that I use at home all the time. Yeah, I'm almost down to the ground. I'm about 1 inch off the ground, but I can live with that. And that, swinging it low like that, is going to allow my dog to snuggle up next to me and get warmth from my underquilt. But normally I'd probably have it a little bit higher than this. I got to get back in the hammock properly. Diagonal lay. Oh yeah, I could do this all day. Okay, so that, and then this is his little quilt. So I would take his little mat and slide it into the back. Now it is blowing around a little bit in the wind, so I am going to use some stakes. I'll grab 4 stakes and a rock. And I'm actually going to bias it, staking it back a little bit. I'm going to adjust my ground cloth. I'm going to pull it so there's a little bit more of the tent floor opposite the door. And that's where my dog's going to sleep. Now they recommend you can use a separate ridge line for the Pet Palace, and that way get it up a little bit above your hammock ridge line. I don't really find that's necessary, and it's just an added complication. So I'm just using the hammock ridge line. And staking it out, you can see it's a little nicer and neater. Slide that back to that side, put the dog blanket where I can reach it, and tuck him in later on. and I can get back in. I just pull the door down. Zip it closed. I'll leave it open a little bit at the bottom there. There's no bugs right now. And so yeah, I've got little ridgeline organizers attached to my hammock ridgeline. I can slip a bottle of water in there, I can put my eyeglasses and phone in the other one. And the dog's gonna be sleeping, actually I got this set up too far that way. So right now I have the excess on this side. So maybe I would put the dog over here, and once he's settled in, I'd put the blanket on top of him. But normally it depends on which way the wind's going too. And all right, so the other aspect, of course, would be putting a tarp on top, and you can do that. Ow! Stepping on stakes. That is the bane of tent camping, right? And in hammocks, you don't worry about it. So what I always do is take my rock, but I didn't do that time, is put my rock next to that stake so I don't step on it. This continuous ridge line for the tarp. So I'll get it set up to cover both ends. And then I can just take it out of its little sleeve. Now, one thing I'll do here, first of all, is I'll bring both sides of the tarp over here. You guys know how a tarp works, so I'm not gonna bother with that much. Just gonna pull it down onto the stakes, same stakes that I used for the tent floor. And that will block the wind coming at me from that direction. Now plus, I've got a little bit of bungee. There's a little loop on the top of the Pet Palace netting, and I've got a little bungee, and I'm going to bring it out to the tarp line. Actually, the little bungee that's stretching the tarp line. Do it on the other side too. So again, got a little loop there. I got a loop through the carabiner and then to the tarp line, and it's gonna pull this taut. So you can see now it's a couple of inches above the line of the hammock ridge line. And it just makes it a little nicer and neater. And again, I'd probably string this a little higher. I would string this a little higher. I mean, I am not quite touching the ground, so my bottom quilt is not compressed, but it is definitely lower than I normally would go. And that is the Pet Palace. After I've been using it for several months now, just on my back porch. I sleep in a hammock every night because of my back. A lot of people say, well, doesn't the hammock hurt your back? I find that a hammock is so much better on my back than a mattress. So I've been using this and getting my dog used to it for about a month, and then I just spent 8 nights out in Glacier Peak Wilderness and used this each night and had no problems with it at all. I'm super pleased with it. Like I said, the closures for the extension where the hammock strings through should be a little tighter, but other than that, I'm super pleased with it, and this is now my go-to for camping with my dog. I'll just put it away now.